Yeah, I think that's working now. So, today I'm starting a new painting, and it's this cat. It's quite a challenging painting. We've got a lot of textures in the fabric behind, and at the front, so we've got like a corduroy blanket. And the cat itself is going to be quite a challenge, if I'm honest. The reason it's going to be a challenge is because it is a very black cat. As you can see, there's a lot of detail and texture on the cat. It's got some greys, it's got a bit of blues, some dark browns, possibly a bit of purple as well. And I think the central point of the cat is obviously the eyes. So the eye is really important. It's what's going to draw the focus in. Anyway, today is all about getting the colour down. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do up here, whether I'm just going to leave it as a sheet. I don't know actually. I might paint in a bit of a background, sort of the grey or the oak colour background. I won't go into too much detail. As I say, I think the challenge is really going to be all the texture of the fabric and everything. So, yeah. I've already done the sketch. Don't know how clear that is on the screen, but already done the sketch. Perhaps its eye is a bit of the wrong shape, but that doesn't really matter. We can... Hello, is this working now? Yes, this is. That's the second time that's happened. I don't know what's going on with my camera. Hopefully it will stay on now. But yeah, I don't know how much of that you heard. Okay. I think that might be fixed now. Hopefully that stays on. I have no idea why that kept turning off there. Palette cam is not on, so let me restart that. Okay, so that's everything on now, I think. Hopefully it stays on this time. I have no idea why everything stopped working. But yeah, I think it's all fixed now. So what I was saying was, if you didn't get that, I'm going to basically put the block color down today, get the cat colors in, and then I'll work on the front cover, which is more of a grey color. I don't know, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do the very background. So what I'm going to do, I probably will do, but initially what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of do the whole background as if it's the white sort of blanket. Just checking everything's still working, which it is. So yeah, I think we're all sorted now. I don't know what those technical issues were. So as always, I'm going to work my way from the back to the front. So I'll first of all do the sort of white sheet of the background. I'll then do the rough cat, and then I'll do the sort of grey corduroy blanket. Today is all about getting the block colour down. It's not really about detail. So yeah, I'll go through that. So let's start off with the background. The background obviously has white in it. It's going to have a little bit of grey as well. Got a little bit of blue as well, I think. Sort of a darkish blue, maybe a bit of purple. So I'll put a tiny bit of purple in there. And obviously the grey colour as well. So they're the three colours I'm going to use for the background, just to get the colours down. And I'm not really going to pay much attention to the texture. I will do a bit of texture as I go along, but it's going to be much more about just getting the colour down. Run out of white. I do have another one. So I won't be doing an awful lot of mixing on the palette here. I'll do the purple later on. I won't be doing an awful lot of mixing on the palette. I'll do it mostly on the canvas. Just opening up this white. So I think this painting is going to be a lot of a challenge. The reason I think it's going to be a big challenge is because I'm really going to have to work out how to get definition in the image, even though there's not a lot of colour variation in the cat. It's like different shades of grey essentially, and that's always going to be a challenge. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to use quite a big rough brush for the background. And most of the mixing, as I said, is probably going to be on the actual canvas itself. I'll get a rough, darker, I don't want it 100% white, so I'm just going to get the whites, mix the white in so it's at least not totally white. I think that's quite a nice one. And I'll start by dabbing it on, essentially. It's very white. Now I'm going to go back to a technique that I used to use a lot. Is very, very textured paint, leaving quite a lot of paint on the actual canvas. I quite like that technique, especially for this fluffy background that we got here, that you can see there. So I'm just going to leave a lot of paint on the background so it dries really quite nicely. And then from there we can sort of create the lines using the texture. So there's a line there that I've just created with the texture. So I guess there's no right or wrong way of doing this. I'm just, I think this particular blanket deserves quite a lot of texture on the paint. It's not just about colour, it's about how the shadows will work on the painting once it's finished. Once it's hanging on the wall. Use the little lumps and bumps to your advantage so you get that texture naturally through the light that's emitting from the shadows. I just realised this isn't very riveting for you because you can't really see the colour that I'm painting, but trust me, it is there. As I say, I'll go on to the texture later on. I don't know whether that'll be today. It might be today. Sort of the dark shades and the light shades. So sorry for, it's been a week since I last streamed, it's been a week since I last did any art. I've been a bit ill, I've been quite busy as well, I've been travelling a bit, but I've been not very well. So for those of you who would like to watch me, I do apologise. I was going to do it yesterday, but I was feeling a bit grotty again, so I didn't. Continue with the light bit up there, and then I'm just going to make it a bit darker as I go down. There will be a time lapse of this, so obviously painting white on white isn't the most riveting thing you've ever seen, but very shortly I will turn into a bit more grey and add a bit more texture in the background here. So this is an interesting painting subject because it doesn't really have any colour in it. It's very much a black and white painting with a bit of grey at the front. The only real colour is the bright green. Well, they're not even that bright, but the green eyes, the sort of lime green eyes of the cat that are staring at you behind the pillow. And that's where all the attention is going to do, because I think this is going to be quite an effective painting, to be honest, because it tells a story. There's a lot of life in kind of a colourless environment. And that's the story behind, I think, this painting in general. That, yeah, it is going to be fairly black and white as a painting, but it's not going to be lifeless. So I think it could actually turn into a pretty spectacular painting, even though it's a bit lacking of the colour, because it'll be all about exploring the life that exists without the vibrant colours that I traditionally tend to paint. I'm very much all about colour when I paint, and I think this is something slightly different for me. So maybe this has taken me a bit out of my comfort zone again, just like the last one did, of the skateboarder. So I'm trying to add a little bit of texture in the background as I'm doing this. I know this isn't, you can't really see it very well. So I'm going up in lines to show the folds and the creases. As I said, I'm doing quite a lot of mixing while on the actual canvas, not on the palette. Need a bit more white paint. I don't know how well you can see the texture on the screen, but I think because of this very fluffy sort of throw or blanket, I'm hoping the texture will bring out the natural shadows and of the painting while it's hanging on the wall. So it'll accentuate what the colours are painted, and the shadows will actually become a natural part of the realistic shadows, and light will become a natural part of what is actually on the painting. So it's using the light around it to make the painting sort of live. And obviously this is just the first pass. I'll go back and do a lot of texture detail on the background later on. I'm going to use the grey a little bit more to add a bit more texture over here, to make the creases show. So I've got the texture of the fluffy blanket going on back here. I'll just continue that going through. One problem with not doing the background, if I am going to go and do the background, it's going to be very textured. So I'm going to have to sort of incorporate that as somehow. The texture of the blanket I've put on the physical texture. So I might have to smooth that off, but now, after I've done all this, just make sure there is a smooth area there. If I want to go back, I'll do the same as I'm doing now to add the texture. But I do have the option to go back and have a smooth background. I'm talking about the bit above where the sheet is in the image. Yeah, I think it does need that border at the top, which is not part of the cushion. So I will go and paint that in later. So with that in mind, I'm going to smooth out the top, roughly. So there's no bits of texture that we don't want there. That's going to come up like that. And I'll just come in and do that all later on. See, I'll do that all later on, maybe today or another time, but the whole top will be a different colour just to border it. I think that's going to look much better than just having a total cushion all the way through. I have been ill, so if my voice disappears, I do apologise. For now though, just to show the border of the cushion, I'm actually just going to go and do basically a pure white. I'll have to redo this later on because I've done it in the wrong order. I should paint from backwards to front. But I'm just going to do a pure white highlight around the top of the cushion, just to show where the border is, and the highlight for the blanket at the back. So yeah, I should have stuck to my guns originally and started off with the right background. I think it's going to look so much better if I do that as a composed image. I think that will work. So I'm just adding a few highlights down the creases. And then that will be the cushion in the background done. If you're interested, this is A2 size, so this is 574 millimeters by 420. It's just under half the size of the skateboarder I did. But for this sort of painting, which is just a single subject like this, I think it's a really nice size. You can obviously go bigger, you can obviously go smaller, but for me, I quite like painting this sort of size of painting. So as I said, today's all about getting the colour down and seeing what happens. I don't think this is going to be a particularly long painting because there's not that much colour or detail in there, but we'll see. There's a lot of detail in the fur that I'll need to bring out, so that's going to take a good couple of hours, I reckon. And the corduroy at the top, it depends how much to town I want to take the corduroy. I do believe there's a little bit of purple in the background in the back sheet. I'm not going to add that today. I'll add that as possibly a very slight wash later on. There is purple in the cat though, so I'll leave that out. Right. I'm going to change brush for the cat. I'm going to use something more like, just for the first pass of the cat. Now I'm going to try and avoid using black. Black is I might use it as a shadow right at the end, but the problem with using black is it will overpower absolutely everything. So I'm actually going to use Payne's Grey, which I usually use for shadows, which is actually a blue colour, which negates the need for purple. There's obviously a bit of white on the cat. I'm definitely seeing blue. So I might add a touch of some indigo. So I can add that in where we need. There's obviously sort of tiny bits of white as well. And I probably won't do the eyes today. So I'm going to start off with the darkest bits of the cat, just using pure Payne's Grey. These are actually around here. So Payne's Grey is quite a bluey black. And hopefully by the end of today, with the subtle colours, the changes of the subtle colours, you'll be able to see that actually even though the cat on the picture looks just pretty black, there's a lot of whites, there's a lot of greys, there's a lot of highlights, and I should be able to capture, even though I won't be going into detail today, I should be able to capture the differences there as we go through. At least that's what I'm planning to do. Like the nose itself is really quite shiny. So it looks a bit weird at the moment because I'm painting from dark to light rather than a particular place forwards. So this area here is quite dark. Which I know it's not. That was quite light. This area is quite dark. And up here is quite dark. It doesn't really matter at this stage if I get it wrong or the colours wrong. What matters is the shapes. I really need to sort out a playlist for my streams. Just same old music every day. So as I say, I'm painting the really dark bits first, and then I'm sort of moving on to a slightly lighter area. I will come back and use a bit of black for the really dark bits and the shadows. At the moment, it's not necessary. I think it's more about getting the shape and getting the rough colours right, and then we can go in with all the detail later on. So, I enjoy painting animals, I enjoy painting people. But I find animals are so much more difficult than people to paint. I really enjoy painting people. I find them really satisfying to grab the expressions. And I guess animals, you can also grab their expressions, so there's no difference there. But animals are just so challenging because I don't know whether it's the fur or you can't necessarily identify immediately with what expression they're making, so you have to sort of make it up as you go along. Yeah, it's really something that I'm not as comfortable painting animals as I am with people. I feel like if anyone gives me a person image, so like a portrait, I'm talking like a face, I'll be able to do it justice. With an animal, I'm a bit apprehensive as to whether it's necessarily going to be really effective. So as you can see, I'm just painting around the claws at the moment. So I'm adding a little bit of blue into this colour over here. The reason is just to draw the attention away. I mean, I don't think it's going to look blue once it's finished. Just to draw the eye from... The whole painting is a story, so you start at the eyes and then you sort of will go down to the claw where it's sort of out with its claws out. And going from a very dark to then subtly increasing the blue colour as you go forward, I think that will probably draw the eye quite nicely. That's a bit too blue probably, but... I don't know whether I want to paint the really, really bright white as a boundary between the cat and the sort of corduroy blanket in the front, or the cushion. I probably will paint it right at the very end, but that will be the very end. I'll basically ignore it until the end. Because actually it creates quite a nice story, because it sort of goes from down here all the way down to the... It helps the eye sort of travel. So I went up to Leeds last week for work. I wasn't feeling very well. I ended up on the train. Ended up taking the train because I wasn't feeling very well, which is fine. That's no issue. But it hit me how friendly people were up north. It was quite icy. As I say, I wasn't feeling very well. So on the day of the conference, on the Friday morning, I was travelling, walking from the hotel to the conference. I really wasn't feeling very well. I think it was pretty obvious. I looked horrendous. I couldn't really speak either. It was quite icy. I didn't bother taking a taxi because it was only a 10-minute walk. But I slipped on some ice. And if that happened down where I live in at the moment, sort of mid to southern England, nobody would have helped you. Nobody would have cared. Everyone would have probably just laughed at you and walked on. However, I slipped on this ice. I didn't even fall over. I just sort of semi-did the splits. And this woman, who I reckon was probably in her 70s, literally ran over to me and helped me up. And I just thought, that just sums up the different mentalities of different places in the UK. The fact that this old lady, who could have quite easily fallen over herself to come and help me, decided she'll just go out of her way and help me. I thought it was lovely. As I say, I don't think that would have happened down here, where I live. Total different mentalities. Right, so I'm moving on to the lighter colour now. I'm going to grab some of the previous colour just for inference. Grab this and just start painting that as a lighter colour. It's going to look a bit bluey, but we can always sort that out later on. That's probably not dark enough, that. I've got two shades there. I've got a darker one here. No, it's lighter there. So, we'll start off over here. And my intention is to paint it blue, even though it's not a blue cat, obviously. The reason I'm painting it blue is so I can go in and do the highlights later on. I wasn't necessarily intending it to be this blue, but we can always go back and fix that later on. There's a bit blue. I'm going to whack on some Payne's Grey again. Try and dilute the blue colour a little bit. It's a little bit better. Just added a tiny bit of black. See, that might spoil it, but we'll see. Maybe it has. Yeah, it's a bit too dark now. So I don't know if you can see the subtle change in colour there. Might be a bit difficult. I think I may have messed it up slightly, but that's fine. We can fix it with a bit of white. So as I say, it's roughly getting the colour in the right place. I don't really care about blending at the moment. I will blend it a little bit with my fingers, but it's not really on top of my agenda. It's all about getting the colour down in the right place. The shapes are correct. And then we'll go in to do the detailing later on. And I'll deal with the eyes right at the very end. So I won't do the eyes today. I'll probably just leave them as white. Which will definitely look a little bit odd, to be honest, but we can cope with that. May have gone a little bit too light with the cat, but with the colour. But we can always fix that later on if we need to. So the bit above the nose is actually really quite bright, so I'm going to paint it that way. And below the nose is a little bit darker. Or below the bridge of the nose, I should say. And I'll obviously go into a lot more detail with the nose later on. But as I say, this is all about just getting the colour down. There's a very light bit of the cat over here, just above its eyes. I've always thought if somebody saw my paintings this early on, they'll probably think I was a terrible artist, because it just looks terrible. It's all about building up the layers until it looks pretty good. The colour a bit here, I think. Used to be a lot darker. Lost the blue a bit, so I'm going to add a bit more in. So I don't think that's looking too bad. I think it needs a lot of work. But I think getting the variety of the colours, you can generally see the shape of the cat at the moment. It is getting there. It is a bit odd. I guess the colours are all a bit not quite blocky, I guess. So I think in total this painting is probably going to take 6, 7, 8 hours maybe. So I'm only, what, 40 minutes in? Might be a bit quicker this one actually. So as I say, there's not a lot of colour in it. But because there's not a lot of colour, there has to be a lot of texture and detail. Mixing it on the canvas here because there's a few areas I just want to add a few like sort of dark patches to, so I'm just going to mix it on the canvas rather than on the palette. I do want that area to be, this area to be distinctly, obviously the edge of the face. So actually looking at it from a distance, it doesn't look too bad. I think it looks quite nice. Still very blocky, obviously, so it will get there. Just adding a few sort of shadowy bits to add a bit more detail and texture into the painting. Under the eyes, over the eyes. So I hope you can see that, yeah, it's already coming along quite nicely, to be honest. It's not. You can definitely tell it's a cat, is what I'm trying to say. So I haven't got a lot of definition between the paw and the body. So what I'm going to do quite now, I'm just going to sort of kind of mix it on the palette, but mainly mix it on the, try and create a little boundary on the painting. Boundary doesn't really exist in real life, but I think it's quite important for the eye to realize what's paw and what's body. The paw is really one of the most satisfying bits of this painting. Understanding the story behind the claws being out. It's quite a sweet cat, really. I'm not really a cat person, but I certainly don't dislike them. Just going to go in and do a couple of highlights now. Again, I haven't washed the brush or anything. I'm just more about just whacking them on where they are. I'm going to blend it in a little bit with the existing paint using my finger. A big highlight along here. And as I said before, there's a highlight up here and here, and there's a sort of highlight above the forehead bit. Nose. I will spend quite a lot of time on the nose because I think the nose is a really important sort of story behind it. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And then again, yeah, just add the highlights as we go along. This is all about block colouring in, and then later on we'll just go straight into doing the sort of all the detail. Quite a lot of highlighting down here as well. Cool. So that's all the blocking I'll do for the cat at the moment. Then I'll move on to the sort of corduroy blanket. I don't know how corduroy I'm going to go. I probably will go fairly, actually, because it adds quite a nice texture onto there. I don't know what technique I'm going to use. I'll sort of experiment and find one that works. But I think it's all about the block colour at the moment. So if you take like the average colour, it is a little bit brighter at the top than it is at the bottom as you go down. So what I think I'll probably do, go against what I usually do. No, I won't. So what I was going to say, I was going to paint light and then paint dark. What I might do, I think I am probably going to paint quite dark. And then the lines will be the white on top. So that'll be quite textured. Or I make the decision now and not go with the corduroy because that's going to be quite difficult. Adds a lovely sort of flow and texture having the lines go down there. So I do want to paint it. I think it's just going to be quite a lot of a challenge. Whatever I do is I'm gonna paint one sort of ish block colour with a gradient, a natural gradient and then put the lines on. I'm wondering whether I do put the dark lines on instead of the light lines, which goes completely against what I usually do, which is do dark first. Right, either way, I need to start doing something. So again, I'm going to use quite a thick brush, not as thick as the background one. Actually, no, I will. Yeah, I will actually do as thick as the background one. I will use the background brush. So, the top left corner of the blanket is actually really quite dark and has lots of lines through it. So I'm just going to paint it like this. All right. Just to show the creases there. And the creases kind of stop and then it gets a lot lighter. So I'm going to mix this white with the grey and the bit of the cat colour as well. Okay, that hasn't gone very far, that white. So I think that's a decent-ish colour for the lighter side of it. I'm just sort of gonna... So I'm drawing the creases on first. I'm not drawing the lines, I'm drawing the creases in the fabric, and then the lines will follow later. So I don't think that's quite dark enough. I'll add a bit of blue in there. So it's like I'm painting in this direction, the direction of the fabric going. The sort of fall of the fabric first, and then I'll paint the lines going this way afterwards. So I think that's all the degrees of freedom that we're sort of experiencing in this. And down here, because there's like a ridge there, I'm just gonna make that a little bit lighter. There's a lot of detail going on around here, which I'll have to do later on. As I say, I'm going to ignore the white boundary for now between the cat and the blanket that I'm painting right now, and I'll come on to that later on if I do, and I will paint it on later on because there's a really bright fluffy line there. I think it's quite important for the story, but I'm going to ignore it for now. What it will do, it will make the cat really pop out of the blanket if I do create that white border there. Okay, so that's a light bit done. Now I need to get a bit darker, so I'm going to grab some of the leftover paint from before. I'll speak to the person who this painting's for and sort of discuss the eyes. I will make them accurate, but I'll ask them if they want me to make them a little bit more punchy, or if they want it to be as soft as in the picture there's not now. picture might not tell the full story of what the eyes actually look like, whether they are punchy eyes or whether they're kind of like soft. Depends what the photo, how the camera took the photo and the lighting, etc. So I think it's important for me to understand not just what's in the photo, what the cat looks like in real life. If you've been following my streams regularly, you'll realise that I'm still trying on Twitch. Don't know why, and I get no viewers at all. Maybe it's because I don't have a regular schedule. I don't know. I just don't necessarily have the ability at the moment to create a regular schedule of streams. I think I will do come January. I'm off to Africa in January for 2 or 3 months, so I'll be able to create a fairly regular stream schedule then. It'll probably, because they're 3 hours ahead where I'm going to be, it'll probably be from 5 o'clock UK time. I'll be streaming regularly. And then at weekends. It gets a little bit darker over here. I've run out of paint, which is really annoying. I don't really want to mix another load of paint, but it looks like I'm not going to have much choice in a sec. Oh, I found a bit of paint. Actually gets a bit brighter over here as well. So you can actually see I've created, even though I haven't created the blanket, you can see I've created the sort of wave and the gradient going down, which is quite important for this blanket, for the story. And I think I've managed to do that quite nicely, even without the lines. I will go back. I'll probably start doing the lines now, or once it dries a little bit. Run out of paint, that's really annoying. Need to put a bit of white there. This isn't quite the same colour, but it doesn't really matter. You might be wondering why I'm using such a big brush so close to the subject. The reason is because it doesn't actually matter what I do now, because I'll be coming in and doing the detail later on. But also having such a rough brush like this, you can see it's creating soft lines rather than hard lines that a small brush would make. So actually, it's quite nice in this instance. because you want that soft between the fur and then the fabric of the blanket. So I think I've done the blanket quite nicely there. I think you can see the textures, the movement going down. It's a little bit brighter here and here. That's the plan. I'm going to go in now and just really sort of show off the creases, I guess. Okay, that was a bit over the top. Actually, is it? I don't know. Probably. So the way I'm showing off the crease is just adding a slight highlight. And then I'll go and use those highlights to then determine how and when I'm going to put the lines around them. So hopefully I then manage to create a sort of flowing blanket. This is a real challenge, this blanket. I've never done something quite as detailed and as complex as this, and I was just going to ignore the fact that it's there, but I thought, well, what's the point in that? Just do it. I'm not really here to paint. Keep myself inside the comfort zone. I want to explore what I can actually do with the painting. And it's not just about copying what you see in the picture. It's about understanding and putting your style on it. So as I said earlier, this area here is actually really bright white. It's a different blanket, or I think it's an extension of the back blanket. I'll do that right at the very end, just to allow the cat and the other blanket the front blanket to sort of pop out a bit more. So I'm putting a few sort of like highlight marks down here. And around here there's one that sort of does that. So yeah, I think it looks alright, to be honest. Obviously needs the lines coming down here, the real texture. I might do that today, I might not. Probably not, actually, looking at the time. Plan to finish about 5:30 today, not 5:30, 9:30 today. Now I've got all the block colour down. I will go up and just finish off the top bit, as I said, because I think it's going to need that. I think the painting itself is going to need a sort of different boundary there, just to show the depth of the field. You can already see the depth because you can see this sort of bulging forward. Cat is there, so currently the cat has no depth to it at all. It's just like a black blob with a few highlights, but there's no depth. But there will be depth, certainly when I put the eyes in, which will be the next episode. And then you've got the sort of faded, looks a little bit like clouds, but really fluffy blanket. But you need that depth behind this to really set it back and bring the layers forward. So you've currently got three distinct layers, but they look fairly flat. So you've got this one, and this one. Having a totally different background is going to bring those layers and allow it to pop forward. So yeah, I made a mistake thinking I wasn't going to do that background, but I think it is really important, to be honest. And it also adds a slight bit of colour. What I am going to do though, so if you have a look at the reference image, I'm going to, you see the, I can't remember what you call it, is it balustrade? The sort of spindles? The stairs? I assume it's stairs. I'm going to do them all the way along. I'm not going to sort of stop halfway through. I'm just going to do them all the way along as like a, with perspective, so they're going to come in like that. In fact, I'm going to draw it on. We're going to have one that does this. The one in the middle is going to do this. Don't know if you can see that on the actual. Don't know if you can see those lines, but there's one there. There's one there. I'm going to make it basically, they're all going to point to a spot that's somewhere down here. So there's 1, 2, 2. The reason I'm measuring this is it's going to look odd if it's not symmetrical. So as I'm sketching this, I'm just wondering if I'm doing the right thing here. I like that one and that one. I'm just wondering if I should just leave it as in 3. Yeah, I've done too many. Just finding my eraser. So, this one's about that. So that one was fine, and there's one more, I think. I think I was just trying to fit too many into the... Maybe that one needs to come this way a little bit. Yeah, I think it's quite important we get this right, to be honest. So if I don't get this right, it's going to look very odd. Adding a bit of geometric sort of designs and patterns into this, otherwise very fluffy painting. You know what? Yeah, this is probably cheating, but I did quite well there actually. If you're wondering what this is for, this is what I used to draw grids. So I think that's going to work quite nicely, that with that really short and narrow sort of. It's very exaggerated, that. So it's going to make the cat look so it's very close to the background. Let me paint it and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to paint the gaps first, and they're going to be sort of more of a beige colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a burnt sienna with quite a lot of tan. Sorry, flesh tint. I don't know if this is going to go well, to be honest, so I might need to paint over it. Okay, that's quite dark, and I'll just grab a bit of white. So this is going to be in between. That's completely the wrong colour. It's more of the wood colour, actually. I'm going to mix in some beige in there. Sorry, I was a bit undecided as to what I was going to do here. I hadn't really planned it. Okay, that works, I think, that beige colour for the in-between. Because obviously, I want to set back from the rest, to be honest. I don't want it to overpower anything. I don't mind if the wood overpowers a bit, because that's the only real colour on the painting, apart from the eyes. But I just don't want it to... I don't want it to be that obvious. So right now I'm painting sort of between the wooden sort of balustrade pieces. It's a Christmas song. So I'll probably need to add a bit more highlighting and shadows in this area later on. But right now I'm not that bothered. I just want to give it a little bit of sort of texture at the back, just to show there's an edge to the whole blanket. So now I need the wood colour, which a bit more burnt sienna into this monstrosity of a colour I put here, a bit of yellow ochre. And I think that colour in the middle there is fairly oaky. Maybe a bit more yellow ochre, to be honest. Wasted a lot of paint making this colour, but that happens sometimes. So let's see what this looks like. This is a base colour for oak. I think that's alright. It's quite orangey, which oak is. So I'll add shadows and sort of highlights onto these and possibly textured pattern later on. It's not quite the right colour, to be honest. It might possibly needs to be a bit. I think as a base colour it's alright actually. The issue with doing things like this, if it's not, if you don't get the edges pretty straight, then it looks a bit weird. As I say, if we look a bit, if we think it's a bit uncomfortable at the back, we can always change it later on. It's not like watercolour where you can't go back. You can always paint over what you've done with acrylics. So wow, you could, right. The change that I've done there has really brought out the layers, as you can see. You've got the balustrade, which is really coming in, showing the perspective that actually we're taking it from a very top-down view. So it's adding a story there. The lines are leading your eyes into the centre of the drawing. I've massively exaggerated the balustrade in terms of its perspective, as in the vanishing point I've put somewhere around here, maybe a little bit lower, but actually in reality it's probably twice that depth, but I've brought it in so it brings in there. And what that's doing is it's adding the depth of layers, because you see something interesting going on but it's not really there, and then it draws your eye into where the main focal point, which is obviously the eyes. And I think that's worked really nicely. And I know I've got a long way to go on this painting, but this has just made it come alive a little bit, just by adding this background perspective on there, allowing you to draw your eyes in as you need to. That's what I really quite enjoy about painting. You do things which I wasn't entirely sure was going to work. Now looking at it, it looks really quite, you're focusing in really nicely there. So yeah, as a first pass of getting the block colour down, I think that works really well. Thanks, Deborah. Makes it look. Looks like the cat's sinking into the cushion. I guess so. It's more about the layers. As I say, I'm about 3-4 hours away from it being remotely finished, and probably about 5 or 6 before it's actually finished. As a first pass, I think that's done really well. I really do think it's really nice. You can set it out to cat and some cushions with some balustrade behind it. So, at the risk of me going too far today, I need to stop really, because I will continue fettling away and I'll end up spoiling it. Yeah, I think I'll continue the streams tomorrow. That's all I need. That's all I'm going to do today. Obviously, there's a recording after this, so feel free to comment on it if you have any opinions. As I say, I'll be streaming probably 8 PM tomorrow, same time. And yeah, second phase of the cat. I will really focus on the eyes tomorrow. I think that's really important next step. And I might focus on the cushion, the corduroy going around there. But I think the face of the cat is really important for the next step, just to see how it's going to flow, and then working outwards from the face. We've got the general borders now, so it doesn't really matter. I think, no, it looks really good. So thank you for watching. I had quite a few viewers today, so that's really good. And yeah, let me know what you think. All right, so thanks for that. I'll, as I say, we'll start again tomorrow at 8 o'clock UK time. And yeah, let me know what you think in the meantime. Thanks. See you tomorrow.